All right, today we are going on a safari, but not to the savannah. We're shrinking down, way, way down, for a trip inside one of the most incredible environments in the universe, a living cell. And our focus is going to be the cytoplasm, the bustling, dynamic world inside. You know, for a long time, the popular idea of a cell was just this simple bag of goo, a blob of jelly. But what if that's completely wrong? What if a cell is actually more like a sprawling, super-organized city with factories and power plants and a complex highway system running through it all? Well, that's the picture we're going to explore. And here it is. Just take a look. This isn't some artist's drawing. It's a real micrograph of the inside of a cell. Look at that beautiful chaos. You can literally see all the different structures, the molecules, the organelles, all packed in there together. This is the territory for our safari.
So our journey officially begins in the cytoplasm. And that's basically the entire internal world of our cellular city. Everything from the nucleus in the center all the way out to the cell membrane.
Now, inside the cytoplasm, there's a really crucial part called the cytosol. Think of it like the city's atmosphere, or maybe the water in a giant, complex aquarium. It's the fluid stuff that fills in all the gaps, and it's where a massive amount of the cell's actual chemistry goes down. And we're not talking about some minor ingredient here. The cytosol makes up a whopping 55% of the cell's entire volume. So this atmosphere really dominates the whole cellular landscape. It is the stage where the entire drama of life is playing out. So what's it made of? Well, here's the breakdown. Mostly, it's water, about 80 to 85%. But it's that other 15 to 20% where all the magic happens. That part is an incredibly rich, concentrated soup of all sorts of dissolved molecules. And what a soup it is. You've got proteins that act like tiny machines, sugars for quick bursts of energy, amino acids ready to build new stuff, and ions that keep the whole internal environment perfectly balanced. This is where the cell does some of its most critical work, like generating emergency energy when oxygen is running low. Okay, so if the cytosol is the atmosphere, where does the city store all its goods? Well, that brings us to the next step, the cell's pantries. We call them cytoplasmic inclusions, and they're basically temporary warehouses where the cell stocks up on materials it's going to need later. You know, you can tell a lot about a cell's lifestyle by what it keeps in its pantry. Plant cells, they stock up on things like oils, which they store in these things called spheromomes, or even latex. But animal cells, they're always on the move, burning energy, so they primarily store two things: pigments and, most importantly, food. So let's zoom right in on that animal cell pantry. What kind of food does a cell pack for a rainy day? Turns out, it's the exact same stuff we look for in our own diets. The big three are all there. You've got carbohydrates for quick fuel, fats for more long-term storage, and then proteins, kind of as a last resort. The cell is incredibly smart about storing and using these reserves right when they're needed. And this is what that storage actually looks like. It's amazing. Those dark, grainy clusters you see there, the ones labeled gly, that's glycogen. It's pure, stored carbohydrate energy just sitting there, ready to be used at a moment's notice. It's like looking at the cell's emergency power packs. Okay, we've seen the atmosphere, and we've checked out the pantries. But what holds this whole city together? What gives it its structure? That brings us to our final stop on the safari, the cell's incredible internal infrastructure, the cytoskeleton. Now, don't think of a bony, rigid skeleton. The cytoskeleton is this dynamic, intricate network of protein fibers. It's kind of like a building scaffolding, giving the cell its shape and support. But it's also like a city's highway system, guiding traffic and helping things move around inside. The cytoskeleton has a few different parts, but just to keep things clear, we're going to zoom in on just one of them today, the thinnest of all its fibers, the ones we call microfilaments. So these microfilaments are built from a really cool protein called actin. They link together to form these thin, flexible ropes that are constantly changing. They're growing on one end and shrinking on the other. And this ability to build up and tear down so quickly is the key to almost everything, from how a cell moves and divides to how our own muscles contract. I love this comparison because it really shows you the difference between the textbook diagram and the real world. On the left, you've got that neat, simple double helix of actin. But on the right, that's what it actually looks like inside a cell. A dense, complex, crisscrossing network that forms the true fabric of the cell's infrastructure. So if you take one thing away from this, it's that we have to throw out that old idea of the cell as a simple blob of jelly. The cytoplasm is a place of just breathtaking complexity and purpose. It's a constantly changing, highly organized, and super dynamic factory for life itself.
But we've really only just scratched the surface. We've seen the city's structure, but how do all these roads and girders actually work together to let the cell crawl, or change its shape, or interact with its world? How does this amazing infrastructure generate force and create movement? Well, that's a safari for our next explainer. Thanks for joining me.